I get it. You're scrolling through a sea of guitars, and every limited edition headline feels like a gamble. You've probably spent a few evenings watching videos of that shiny Gretsch with the Paisley finish, wondering whether it's just a pretty piece of decor or actually a workhorse you can take to a gig without second-guessing yourself. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. But before you click, let's break down what owning this gold Paisley Penguin really means day to day, and why it could be either the perfect fit or an unnecessary splurge. First off, the look. Gretsch's signature Paisley pattern isn't just a design flourish, it's a visual cue that says you're stepping onto a stage with a bit of swagger. For anyone who values stage presence as much as tone, that gold-infused swirl can actually shift the vibe of a small club set. I've seen it in live streams where the guitarist's silhouette against a dim light instantly grabs attention, something you can't replicate with a plain black or sunburst finish. That said, the aesthetic does come with a practical side effect. The finish is a high-gloss polyester that can show fingerprints and scuffs more readily than matte options. If you're the type who tosses your guitar in a case after a sweaty rehearsal, you might end up spending extra time polishing it before the next show. Now, let's talk about the wood. The body is mahogany, a choice that traditionally gives a warm, rounded low end. Pair that with a maple top and you get a subtle brightness that keeps the note definition clear, useful when you're playing chord-heavy rhythm in a blues jam or a crunchy riff in a rock context. The ebony fingerboard adds a slick feel under the frets, which many players say translates to smoother bends and faster runs. In practice, that smoothness shines when you're pulling off those classic Gretsch rockabilly licks that require quick, clean hammer-ons across the higher strings. If you're used to a rosewood board, you might notice the slightly tighter bite of ebony, which can feel a tad firmer under your fingertips. Nothing wrong, just a different tactile experience. The pickup configuration is another defining element. 2 humbucking pickups give you a thick, full-bodied sound that sits nicely in the mix when you're playing with a band. I tried the guitar through a small PA system at a rehearsal, and the humbuckers cut through the drum kit without sounding muddy, delivering that crunchy overdrive you'd expect from a classic rock tone. Because they're humbuckers, you also get a decent amount of noise reduction, which is a blessing if you've ever been frustrated by single coil hiss in a high-gain setting. The trade-off is that you lose some of the bright, snappy character of single-coil pickups, so if you're a funk player who relies on that chime, you'll need to adjust your expectations or consider a pedal to compensate. One of the most talked about features on this model is the Bigsby Vibrato. It's not just a gimmick, it's a functional tool that lets you dip into classic surf rock dives and subtle pitch shifts without having to pull a whammy bar that screams hard rock. In a live setting, I used it for a gentle chorus-like warble on a clean arpeggio, and the effect added a dreamy texture that a standard tremolo can't replicate. However, Bigsby systems are famously temperamental when it comes to tuning stability. If you're a gigging musician who can't afford to spend 10 minutes retuning between songs, you'll need to either lock the strings or accept that you'll be checking intonation more often. The mechanism also adds a modest amount of weight to the headstock, which can feel unbalanced if you're used to a lighter, Bolton-style neck. Speaking of weight, the combination of mahogany body and the hardware, including the gold-plated bridge and tuners, makes this guitar sit a bit on the heavier side compared with a typical Strat-style solid body. I found it perfectly manageable for a 45-minute set, but after a marathon 2-hour gig, the shoulder can start to feel like it's holding a small piece of furniture. If you have a history of neck or shoulder discomfort with heavier guitars, you might want to try it in a store first or consider a strap with extra padding. Let's put all of this together in a realistic use case. Imagine you're a semi-professional player who gigs a few nights a week, does occasional studio work, and likes to stand out visually. You need a guitar that can deliver warm rhythm tones for a blues rock ballad, bite into a crunchy lead for a classic rock cover, and also provide those vintage-style vibrato accents for a surf-inspired instrumental. The Gretsch Paisley Penguin checks those boxes. The humbuckers give you that thick, sustain-rich tone, the Bigsby adds a unique expressive tool, and the gold Paisley finish makes you look like you belong on stage. The ebony fingerboard helps you execute fast solos without finger fatigue, and the mahogany body keeps the low end full and resonant, which translates nicely on both PA and home amp setups. Now, who should probably walk?